Um, okay. Obviously, the Patriots have so many weapons in their passing game. So I guess between Gronkowski and Edelman, do you kind of pick your poison, or and obviously there are others, but how do you figure out, how do you cover them all?
Well, I think it's hard, because number 33, add him to it, number 80, they have every offense that you play in this league possesses problems, possesses issues. And all the guys and the jersey numbers that you listed, I think they're great players. But obviously the guy that wags the dog is number 12, and he's the guy. He's he's phenomenal. He really is, watching him, and what he's able to do, what he's able to dictate. And then obviously they have, you take 87 away, well, then you got to deal with 11. You take 87 and 11 away, then you got to deal with 33. Well, you take all three of them away, you got to deal with 80 and 19, who are really good players in their own right. And then they bring number 29 in and hand him the ball off. So they're a very, very good offense. There's no doubt about it. But I think when you play games like this, the thing that you have to do is that you got to go do what you do really, really well. And we haven't tackled well the last 3 weeks. We have to tackle, Forget, all the jersey numbers of their weapons. We got to, whatever we have called, whether it's, quarters or Tampa 2 or 3 deep or we're rushing 3 or rushing 6. We got to go do what we do the best that we've done all year, and there's no margin for error, because that's what they do better than anyone. They take advantage of a team when they make a mistake, and they cash in on it. So, the thing that we've really preached about all week is, yes, they have a great system. Yes, they have a great quarterback running it. Yes, they have great players in the system. But it's about us. It's getting the call, getting lined up, and going and making a play. And that's what they rely on, is you screwing up, okay? And that's what we can't do. We got to do our job better than we've done it all year long.
It might be this week, it might be in a couple of weeks, but at some point you're going to have Hall, Culliver, and Breland all back on the field together.
That'd be sweet, wouldn't it?
It would. My question is, how are you going to, are you going to go back to where you were? I guess the only time they've all been on the field together is the first half of that Giants game. You're going to go back to that and have, have Hall start, Breland in the slot.
Well, I got enough issues this week. I got all those jersey numbers that we just talked about. But we got, I know one thing. We'll have 11 guys out there when the ball snapped, and like I said, we got to go do our job. But it will be, all those guys are progressing. They're getting close, and it will be nice when that does happen. But until then, like I said, like I've told you guys all the time, the 11 guys that are in the huddle, they're starters, and they got to play like starters.
Joe, you guys are in the bottom third in the league in sack rate. What are you doing to try to generate more pressure, and how important is it, especially this week, to get more pressure on the quarterback?
Oh, it's and that's always the fine line that when you play a great quarterback is, do you drop a bunch of guys in the coverage that limits your rush? Do you bring a bunch of guys in the rush? Well, then you're limited in coverage. So, we have a nice plan. We'll have a mixture, but again, when we rush 4, we got to rush 4. Guys got to win. We talk about on the back end winning the one-on-one in coverage. Well, it's equally as important up front winning that one-on-one rush. So whether we're bringing 4, whether we're bringing 5, whether we're bringing 6, guys got to win the one-on-one rush. And again, especially when you play a team like this, you get opportunities on one-on-ones. I don't care if you're in the back end or the front end. You got to win the one-on-one matchups. And this week, no question, especially in the rush.
Chris Baker was a guy before this year who flashed pretty commonly, but you look for a little bit more consistency from him. He's made a lot of plays this year for you. What have you seen from him? And I talked to Terrence Knight. He said probably it helped that he's just focusing on one position, and now that Knighton has the nose tackle position locked up.
Yeah, Chris has done a great job. He's been he has played well, and he's got to continue to play well for us, because you need interior disruption in your defensive line. And I think Hatch has been disruptive. Maybe he doesn't have the sexy numbers, but I think both those guys have been disruptive. And I don't care what kind of front you play. I don't care if you're a 3-4 front, a 4-3 front, an odd front, an under front, an over front. Your interior has to be disruptive. So Bake has done a nice job. We challenge him every day. We want more. We're greedy. And he's taken that challenge and really ran with it this season.
Back to the tackling issue, I guess. Where do you see the common theme? Like, what is the issue there? How do you get better when you're not allowed to? I mean, it's not like you're in pads every single day and can practice and repetition it. Yeah. So is it just the tackling? Is it angles? What goes into the?
I think it's struggles? A little bit of we've talked about this in here, earlier in the year. I think it's an issue that every defense in the NFL has, just because of the way the rules are, the way the structure is. Tackling as a whole in this league is really taken a toll, just for the simple fact in the offseason you can't tackle. Even in training camp now, you're allowed one padded practice a day. You don't tackle. A lot of guys necessarily don't play a lot in the preseason. When you are given the chance to live tackle, they don't play. So those aren't excuses. Those are just the cold hard facts. So then, therefore, we have to try to create those things, in individual. Whether it's tackling a bag, tackling a medicine ball. So you try to create those things. You try to preach those things. In practice, you try to teach and preach leverage and angles. And those things are preached and will continue to be preached. But at the end of the day, on Sundays in the NFL, it's a live, full-speed, one-on-one tackle. And you got the ball, and I got to get you on the ground. So, but of course, we work on those and preach those things on a daily basis. But until you get a live, actual shot, that's when you got to cash in on it. And like I said, we have not tackled well. Going back over the bye week, really looking at the plays we've given up. I'd say as high as 85% of the plays that we've given up have just simply been on missed tackles. So, and this week no different. They got playmakers. 87 and 29. Those are tough guys to tackle. Just because of their size. But then 80 and 11 and 33, those guys, you really have to maintain leverage and do a great job. So every week has challenges. This week's no different. But again, tackling's at a premium every week, but especially this week when you play against an offense like we're playing against.
Joe, how much of a balancing act do you have to deal with when deciding whether Ryan Kerrigan can go on Sunday? He told us yesterday that he has to have his fingers and his thumb exposed so he can grab guys, but he also knows he's got to have a cast protecting that broken bone in his hand. How much of that is him, the trainers, yourself, you're kind of deciding if he can help?
Well, I mean, I'll never get involved. Excuse me, with injuries. If Ryan's up and running, we're going to coach the crap out of him, and he's going to play his heart out. So I rely, everyone has jobs to do, and our medical staff does a great job. They say Ryan's able to go and he can go, then he goes. So, he had a good day of practice out there today. I think anytime that a player has anything that's kind of cumbersome on them, they got to kind of feel their way through it initially. My biggest fear, I know, when they said the extent of the injury, but yes, he was going to play, I thought he was going to have one of those huge clubs where his hand was going to be completely encompassed. That's not the case. He has his fingers, he has his thumb. So again, I think especially early on, he's going to have to kind of feel his way through it. But he did a little work on Monday when we came back. He did a little work yesterday. He did more work today. We'll cut him loose tomorrow, and you guys all know Ryan Kerrigan. He's going to go like a madman. So, but it's going to be something that he's going to deal with. Anytime that you play with a cast, it's an issue.
You talked about trying to get your defense to focus on what it does well and not pay so much attention to. I mean, obviously, scout the Patriots and know what they do, but not try to pay so much attention to who they are. How tough is that when just the reputation that they have, and you've got a week where most of us are asking questions more often about them than maybe we would with other teams. Just, the level of focus that goes on them with no matter whoever they're playing.
Well, I think, again, just bottom line, when you play them, again, and I used the equation with someone today that, in college, when a true freshman comes in, he learns the system, he kind of feeling his way. He's a little bit better as a sophomore, a little bit better as a junior. By the time he's a senior or a fifth-year senior, he's been in the system for so long. He knows it. He understands. He knows the nuances, the intricacies of it. Well, number 12 is a 16-year senior. He's been in the same system, running the same thing for 16 years or however long he's been in the league, So I think that's again where you can't help yourself but to think of them and look at all the greatness that they have. You got to go back and look at yourself, and you got to play one play at a time. Okay, you can only play one defense at a time, whatever that is, whether you're pressuring, whether you're playing coverage, whether it's nickel, whether it's base, whatever. And you got to do your job better than you've ever done it before. And when you get a chance, like I said earlier, you got to get the call, you got to get lined up, and you got to make a play. And that's where this team really gets you, because they wait for you to make a mistake. They wait for you to be off. And they're, in rhythm all the time, with the main reason with number 12, he's been in the system for as long as he has. He's counting on you to make that mistake. And when you make that mistake, that's when they cash in. So, and that's what makes them great, and that's what makes them, one of the best teams that, at least in the last few years. So it's more about us focusing on our job, us doing our job better than we've done it all year, because they're waiting for you to screw up. They're waiting for you to make a mistake, and then they pounce on you. We can't allow that to happen.
Coach, sort of to dovetail on that a little bit, there's such this aura about the Patriots and how great they are and everything. Do you find your veterans are having to help the younger guys sort of just focus on their jobs? Are they pretty much doing it themselves? Are you having to just kind of get them to just
you'd
focus?
have to get into the play. I don't know how the players. I don't know if as a player, I don't know if they look at that much. I think they basically just look at the matchup that they're going against. Again, I'll go back to the thing that we just continue to preach. It's not about them; it's about us. Now, again, there's matchup issues that you have to deal with and things like that. But if we play our technique properly, if we do what we're supposed to properly, if we win our one-on-one matchup every time we have an opportunity to play, we give ourselves a chance to win that down, win that series, win that quarter, and so on.
I understand you've said it's about you guys, but I do have a Brady question, one more. As you study film of Brady in past games, how rare or unusual is it for you to find an example of when a defense truly rattles him and forces him into a bad decision? And are there any tendencies or vulnerabilities that you've spotted you could share?
Yeah, I definitely think, but again, I go back to it. It's hard to trick any veteran quarterback. It really is. Guys that have played in this league long enough, there isn't a coverage or a front or a stunt or a pressure that they really haven't seen. And again, with him having so much consistency in the system for as long as he has, it's hard. But we're going to try. People do try, and you see at times it does happen. But again, that's obviously the goal every week, is just to try to make the quarterback think it's one thing and give him the other thing. So it does happen. Doesn't happen that often with number 12, but it does happen. And we're going to do our best to try to make it happen repeatedly.
Thanks, Coach.
Okay.